Well, have a look at this video filmed by hunt saboteurs in Leicestershire and watched by considerably over 1 million people. Presenter Chris Packham is demanding that the RSPCA investigate this incident, and they are. The police say they're ready to assist too. On Twitter, the woman, the rider, is being widely vilified. She's faced death threats and has been forced into hiding, reportedly. Having been at the still centre of a Twitter storm, I can imagine to some degree how she might be feeling, remorseful, embarrassed and really rather frightened by this stage. Deservedly so, many will say. She is, according to several online comments, an evil psychopath who deserves to be kicked and worse. She exemplifies the ruling class who sustain the barbarism of trail hunting. Well, she's not a toff, actually. She's a primary school teacher. Like many of the 500,000 Britons who keep horses, she's probably not awash with cash. One of the great urban myths about horsey folk is that they're all loaded. A few are, but a great many scrimp and save to pursue a hobby that takes over lives almost like no other. I should know, my late wife and I decided that the best way of keeping our children occupied and exhausted and able to manage risk was by getting them to ride. And although I'm an equestrian ignoramus who grew up in the city, I no longer see horses as Disney characters who crave nothing more than an apple and a kind word. The first time I recognised this was when we were lent a pony. It got its foot caught in a fence, whereupon a neighbouring New Forest pony backed up towards it and repeatedly kicked it with both hooves with a force that would have broken a man's leg. It was vile behaviour to my human eyes, but perfectly natural in the wild, where the pecking order is very real and very brutal. I say this because although the rider in the video you saw a moment ago was clearly out of order, she isn't the incarnation of cruelty. I'm not defending her, that would probably lead to death threats after all, but I am encouraging some perspective. I get very suspicious when one person, so few people have leapt to her defence, finds themselves on the receiving end of a massive social media pile-on, especially one spurred on, feels like the right phrase for this story, by activists who tell a partial story. For instance, it's widely claimed that this female rider punched her horse. I don't know if I can rewind to those pictures, but let me reprise what you saw a few moments ago. She didn't. She slapped it. And you can see that in the picture. She slapped it across the face. Not great. There you go. But if this were a court hearing where there was actual evidence, a judge would see a very big difference between a slap and a punch, I can tell you. The other thing is this. There is a gap opening up. It's long been there, actually, but it's getting bigger all the time, it seems. On one side, predominantly urban commentators. On the other, mainly rural folk whose comprehension of animals is based rather more on experience. And I can guarantee that many of the latter, the country folk, will have seen the reaction to this video and felt a sense of moral paralysis, unable to speak out, to contextualise, for fear of being seen as an apologist for animal cruelty, but also conscious of the essential calculus of having a horse. They tend to have the brain of a toddler inside half a tonne of unpredictable bone and muscle. I mention this because horsey folk know that many equestrian injuries don't happen on horseback. They happen when they're being led around in and out of stables or a lorry, which is what the woman in the video was attempting. I know this is definitely true because I've been knocked off my feet by a stampeding horse, and I've made at least one trip to hospital with a child who was left concussed. The incident I'm thinking of, my lad was leading a pony, which another took a swipe at. It missed his pony, but it connected with his head. He was wearing a riding hat, thank goodness. My point is that generally a horse will be ungovernable if it senses fear or imagines you to be weak. Nature is red in tooth and claw and all that stuff. Of course, it should be possible to do this without excessive physical chastisement, but often it's only an appeal to baser instincts that works. A threatening tone of voice, an offer of food, a strong shove, maybe a slap on the shoulder. It's not sadistic, it's sometimes necessary. Get it wrong, be weak, and bad things happen. A horse that's out of control is a hazard to itself, passing cars, dogs, kids, etc., etc. To which some people will say, probably right now, if you have to control them with force, to compel them with a slap, then it's better that people don't keep horses at all. 5 million Britons either ride or have ridden horses. If you made it illegal, as some vegans and others want, it's not just people who will suffer. There are currently about a million horses in Britain, How many would be left if they were permitted to live only as undomesticated animals in the wild? A few thousand, perhaps. Worse still, we would, as a society, lose something I think that's really quite vital, a connection with an older and yes, tougher way of life based on the most successful interspecies collaboration in human history. That's the Brazier angle.